Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Now today I'm going to be running through the 12 steps that I did to complete my first ever children's book. Please excuse the background noise. Our studio is based in an office on a main road, so please excuse the noise. I'm going to be going through the 12 steps that I did to complete my first ever children's book commission, which I am super excited to share with you guys, but I will admit I have been procrastinating like crazy putting this video up. And the reason being is because this is my first ever children's book, and you guys might know or might not know that my ultimate dream is to have a range of children's books in the long term. So when I'm a lot older and my style is really refined and finished, I would love to have my own range of children's books and just have a huge collection. That is my ultimate dream, and it's something I've always been passionate about. And if you are new to my store and stuff, you will see that I have little characters kind of popping up in my store like Gingy and Spice and stuff, and that is why my ultimate goal and dream has always been to illustrate children's books. And I completed my first step of that dream by getting commissioned to do this book, so I thought I would share my experiences. But as a creative, this was my first ever commission, and my style has changed considerably and my skill set has changed considerably since doing this book. So I can't help but look back at this book and point out all the flaws and only see flaws in this book. If you're creative, you probably struggle from this, but nonetheless I'm still really proud of committing, finishing, completing and seeing the printed product in my hand. So yeah, I'm going to basically go through the stages and of how I illustrated it. So number one was the brief of the book. So I actually got commissioned to do this off the author, and the author lives in a local area and is actually a friend of Dean's, and he said he really liked my style, and he approached me and asked me if I wouldn't mind illustrating a book, and we kind of met up and we had a chat in my front room. He actually got a contract with a small publishing house up in Scotland, and I had to be approved by the publishers as a request for him, kind of, if that makes sense. So he requested me as an illustrator, and the publisher could have said yes or no. They could have supplied their own illustrator, but I sent through a portfolio of some work that I'd done personally. I hadn't illustrated a book before, but I had been working on a lot of characters. My Katnipp work that I do in the business has a lot of character base and kind of has that children's book illustrator style, so I sent off my digital portfolio and my website to the publisher, and they said yes. I had a thorough read of the manuscript. I read it over and over again so I could get a feel of the characters and vision it in my head. I also wrote down bullet points of what I wanted the character to be like. I also talked to the author what he felt the character was like as well, and I really wanted to pinpoint the characters that I wanted to appear in the book. I also wanted to add in a little extra dog, and not once is that dog mentioned in the children's book, but the author, James, had a dog and I based it off his dog, and I just had him as a little side character, a sidekick, kind of following him through the journey along and kind of meeting the other characters which are included in the book along the way. So I thought it was a really cute little extra that I really wanted to include, and that brings me into my next step. Step number 4 was actually sketching out the characters, and I had a few sheets of paper and my sketchbook. I can't actually find my original sketchbook. I think it may be at home, but I still have a folder here which has loose sketches of how I wanted the character to look and how I wanted him to come across, and his name was Freddie. And I just had an image in my head already of this little blonde guy, and I just jotted down my ideas, changed up the face. I wanted to make sure that I represented the character perfectly. I kind of experimented with different outfits, different hairstyles and things like that until I found one that I really liked, and I refined him. Once I had Freddie, which was the main character, complete, I then wanted to sketch out the dragon. I wanted to sketch out the little characters like the owl, the chameleon and things like that, so I also did some sketches on them as well. So once I had them all sketched up and I had a really good idea, I sent that to the author, made sure he liked it, and once he approved of it, I went ahead with the next step, which is step number 5, which was storyboarding. So storyboarding is basically laying out my pages. I did a basic grid system with the pages kind of like a double page spread. I got given, I think it was 36 pages or 34 pages in total that I had to fill. So I had to plot out how the manuscript was going to be divided between the pages and how my illustrations were going to tell the story throughout the pages in relation to the manuscript. So I did a storyboard and made sure it kind of fit really nicely and smoothly as you flip the page. I recommend this to anyone. This step shouldn't be skipped, guys. It really shouldn't. You shouldn't just go straight in with the illustrations, because then say you go in with the illustrations for the book and you print it all out, you lay it out, and you realize it doesn't work, it's going to be disastrous. Whereas doing these little thumbnail kind of storyboarding and kind of laying out how you think the book is going to read well, this helps you in the long run. It saves a lot of heartache having to re-illustrate them in the future. This is a crucial step. You should never ever skip out the step, in my opinion. Kind of also at some scenes where Freddie discovered the diamond with the dragon, I wanted that to kind of have a wow factor, so I wanted it to be a double page spread along with certain other themes that I wanted to be important in the book. I wanted them to have a wow factor in them. And then I also did like little montages where I would use kind of 3 different illustrations to kind of show his journey as the timeline was going along in the book. So yeah, that storyboarding was super helpful for me and super important. Once the storyboard was approved, it was step number 6, and it was choosing what I was going to illustrate with. Was I going to do this traditionally, or was I going to do this digitally? In the end, I opted with digital because it was what I was most comfortable with back then. I was just learning new things, because illustrating a book can take a long period of time. In total, we were working on this book for more than a year, so I think it was around a year and 2 months. It was a long period of time, and I had to go with what was comfortable for me at the time and what I knew I was best in at those times, and what I had the highest skill set in was illustrating digitally. And as it was my first book, I wanted to feel as comfortable as possible illustrating and as confident as possible in the book. So I opted for digital illustration and I completed the full book on Photoshop. So that was the step of deciding whether to go the traditional route or the digital route. So once I knew what medium I was going to use, I then wanted to pick a colour palette for the book. So I didn't want to use every single colour, and if you look at the book you will see that the colours are repeated over and over again. So what I created on Photoshop was a patch. I actually did a digital file which I can't find, and I illustrated the characters in multiple different colours, and then I picked one colour palette that I really liked. And because it was kind of a young boy lead and this book is targeted towards boys and girls, I didn't want it to become overly feminine. Now if you're aware of my work and you know me, a lot of my work is overly girly. It's kind of very catered towards women and girls, so I wanted this to be kind of a neutral book, so I decided to add some pops of colour. So I used yellows, I used blues, and I used reds, really primary colours, and then I added greens and things like that, and those are just the main colours that I used throughout the book. So once I was happy with the colour book, it was step number 8, and that was doing the final illustrations. So basically, I just got to work and I did the final illustrations, and this took me around 6 months in total, because at the time I was working freelance for another business. I also had my Etsy business, and yeah, it was a crazy time in my life. I had a lot going on, so it took me around 6 months to fully complete and illustrate every single page of the book. And once I was finished and happy with the illustrations, I kept going back and tweaking things, especially the first page. What I will recommend is don't illustrate your first page first. So I went in, I've heard this somewhere before and I can't remember where. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts and YouTubers, especially Will Terry, the illustrator who's illustrated hundreds of children's books, and I didn't want to put too much pressure. It's kind of like the first page in your sketchbook. Like, you don't really want to like sketch correct on that page because that's the first page you see, and because it was the first children's book I ever did, I went in with about 4 pages in and I illustrated that one first. It's actually the scene where he's scrubbing the coal in the sink, and that was the first ever page I illustrated. I actually did the first page last. I also did the big spreads that I wanted to have that wow factor in kind of nearer the end of the timeline, because I wanted them to have a really big wow factor and I wanted to refine my skill set because it was a learning process for me. And as I was going along illustrating this book, I also learned a lot of things as well. 6 months is a long period of time. I was illustrating every day in my sketchbook, trying to get better and better and better, and yeah, it was just a process of completing the book and illustrating it, and I painted everything with Photoshop. Once I was done finishing all the book and everything and I was happy, so I sent it off to the publisher, sent it off to the author and got their approval for everything. This is when they added an extra page in the manuscript. I actually didn't have to change any of the illustration. The author and the publisher were really happy with how the illustrations came out, so I am very lucky I didn't have to make any changes or adjustments. The only thing I had to do was, like I said earlier, I had to add an extra double page spread in the book which featured the owl. So I went away and I finished that and I sent that off to them. Once they were happy with all my tweaks of my illustrations and things and everything was all systems go, that was it. I was done. It was an amazing feeling. I was like, I am finished. This anxiety is no longer on my shoulders because it was my first ever book, so I didn't know how it was going to turn out, to be honest. And yeah, it felt like a huge kind of win for me. But I wasn't quite done yet because I had to go in and I had to illustrate the book cover. Now, if you have been here before, you may have seen me illustrate this book cover on one of my very first studio vlogs. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. You will see that it has changed a lot at Katnipp. It was just under a year ago. It was last September, I think it was, or October. But yeah, that's crazy. And I illustrated the book in that studio vlog, so definitely check that out if you want to see my process for illustrating the book cover. Again, I did thumbnails. I sent it off to the publisher, made sure she liked the layout and everything. I'm pretty sure I've got a spider in my hair or something. And then once they were happy, I then illustrated the front cover, which was this, the dragon diamond. I mean, there is things I would change, kind of like the placement of the diamond is a bit strange. If you can see as well in my illustrations, I forgot to mention this, I actually added some traditional media. I added some watercolor textures over the top to create this beautiful watercolor pattern, and that kind of follows a theme throughout the book. So once everything was done, the book cover was done, the illustrations were done, it was out of my hands and it was like, yay! And it was just a case of waiting for the book to be printed and published, and then I had the final piece in my hands. Educated me on so many different levels. I learned so much illustrating this book. It gave me the confidence to kind of go in and know that I would be very confident doing another book. It really did boost my confidence. There was a lot of anxiety around it and a lot of fear around it at first because I'd never done it before. I knew I wanted to do it and it was just overcoming that initial fear, and it was also a mix of excitement as well. There was so many emotions going on, especially because it was my first book. But now I feel so confident. I would love to illustrate books again, and I will illustrate books again, I promise. And yeah, that was the final result, and that's how I illustrated my first ever children's book. I don't actually sell these on my store. Because it was my first book, I don't get royalties for this book. How I get paid is I got paid in a lump commission for this book. So I don't actually sell these on my store. As you can see, it says James Ashley Nicholson. I am on the inside of the book. Oh, I also did these pattern pages, forgot to mention that. I am inside the book here, Catherine Case, and yeah, I don't actually sell these on my store or anything like that. I mean, I could buy them wholesale and sell them. Let me know what you think in the comments if you would like me to do that. But yeah, I hope you found this insightful. Maybe if you want to be a children's book illustrator or you're just curious about how I did my children's book, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can answer them. If you have any suggestions for videos you would like to see in the future, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I love you as always. I will see you very soon. Alright then. I love you. Goodbye.